Hello, everyone. Time for another episode of Weather University. I'm your host, Matt DiNardo, but really today is not about learning about weather per se in terms of a topic. It's going to be welcoming in my guest who needs absolutely no introduction, John Bernier himself. Johnny, how are you?
Hello, Matt. Here we are late in the evening, folks. We're doing this after we're all done work for the night. So this is one of these things we're putting together as we head towards the bewitching hour.
The bewitching hour. So, John, 41 years. We're talking about your legacy here, your career at WRIC, before that WXEX. First of all, you're on the eve of your retirement.
Yes.
How are you feeling?
A little apprehensive, a little relieved. It's been a long row, and as we all know, in a way, it's hard to figure out when it's time to go, because doing this has been such an integral part of my life, your life, for the amount of time that you've done it. Matt's a little bit younger than me, just a wee little bit, and it's always one of the things. I'm going to credit everybody here and the management. I'm going out on my terms, not on their terms.
Yep, which is sometimes rare in this business. We have all had friends and colleagues that have been shown the door in one way or another. For you to be able to walk out after 41 years and say it's time is kind of a really nice way. And I hope that you know that we're sincere when we say good luck and congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So before you came to, let's get a little history, because it's 41 years here.
Yep.
But there was more news at other stations and even newspaper before this.
Sure. I started as a sports writer, covering hockey, ice hockey.
Your favorite.
Yeah, our favorite. His favorite too. Way back over 50 years ago, for one local newspaper. And that expanded. They added me into other sports. And then I ended up actually kind of playing two newspapers off against each other. We were all chasing down money. And I did that through the last couple of years of high school and through college. Folks, I've been doing this journalism thing for 50 plus years now. So, it's a long road. And then after college, I went to South Dakota, worked out there at a station that's actually now kind of defunct. It's been rolled into another station. It's called the duopoly in the television business, folks, where you essentially have two TV stations that are inside one. Then to Evansville, Indiana, which is actually, that station is also a duopoly and now one of our sister stations.
Yep.
Then Cleveland, Ohio, and then came here. And yes, it was one of those where I left Cleveland. It was their decision, not mine.
Gotcha.
So, which happens to all of us.
It does. And when you left Cleveland and it came here, was this in your mind at that point for you and your wife to start a family, or was this like, let's just see how this rolls?
It was to see how it rolls. The family had already started because Megan was several months old.
Okay.
When she came here, because she was born in Cleveland, and then came here when she was several months old and moved in and just got it going. And then Eric came along, and then we got to the point to where, after I'd been here for 5 years, we face that thing that all parents face. Schools. And when you look at it, with kids, there are break points with kids, where you can move. You move at the end of elementary school. You moved at the end of middle school. But it just came through. Once we got rolling here, it was like, well, we're here. We're staying here.
Which is great. The area has endured you, it loved you, and hopefully you have loved it back, and I think you have, for sure. So once you're here, you're down in Petersburg.
Right.
1984 is when you started, right?
And 2 weeks, about 2-3 weeks after I started, two weeks plus after I started, we had a tornado come right over the building.
Yeah. We're going to get to the wild weather that you've seen in quite some time.
Yep.
You were in Petersburg for about 13-ish, 14 years, right?
No, 6 years.
Oh, so I thought it was 98. It was 89 you moved to here.
April 30th.
Oh, okay.
April 23rd, 1990.
1990 is when we moved to WRIC.
Yep.
In the Arboretum. Okay.
Yep.
My timeline was a little bit off there. I had an extra decade in there. Gotcha. Okay. So now you're here. Now, how was it shifting from one building to another?
That was a real interesting weekend for us here. Now, one of the things that happened was we had two locations. So we had an office, which was the newsroom and sales and management over on Buford Road, the corner of Buford and Midlothian. And then we had the studios down on South Crater Road. And what happened was the Buford Road people were already in here.
Okay.
Okay. They were already in here working on stuff. But we had all the studio operations still going on there, and the news anchors would shuffle down there. I just went straight to work there every day down the back roads of Chesterfield County. It was always fun at night trying to avoid the deer on Winnapock Road. And we came in, we did the morning show on, well, it was the Friday before. So let's see, Monday was the 23rd. It would be the 20th.
Okay.
And did the morning show. Started to strike all the equipment. In fact, Megan was in kindergarten. It was spring break from kindergarten. So it's like, come on, Megan, we're going to the TV station, and we're taking the TV station apart. And we loaded up. We had stuff. We just loaded up to a van, came up here, and folks, these were really old computer systems we had back then too. So we put that in there. The actual studio that you see us doing the news in was the production studio at that time. The news studio was in the other studio, which is actually where Matt started when he came here.
Right.
And what we did was we just piled equipment in there and started assembling everything in here. We ran the station out of a sports truck, just like what you see at a football game, baseball game, through the weekend, and then turned everything on Monday. A little dirty secret with that was we said, welcome to WRIC.com, and have a big party here, all kinds of stuff. Rolled our first news story, the video that you see, and I'm so-and-so out in the field reporting, and the lights blew out in the studio. Boom, just like that. So
Trip the breaker,
reset that real quickly, and that got taken care of. So, but that's what we did. And that was a really interesting weekend because with everything we had going on, I think I worked 32 hours in 3 days.
Gee, yeah. Long time for
So,
sure.
yeah,
11 plus hours.
long time for sure.
And that was setting up the weather department with the engineers, plus, right?
Yep, getting all the stuff, equipment into the racks, hooked up, wired, and crossing your fingers and hoping that it's working.
That's the wildest thing, because I've been here with you now 21 years, and we have had 5 different weather systems-ish come through.
I'm trying to think.
Well, it came in, it was WSI with a bit of Barron's, Fast Track, and Viper. Then we had to consolidate that out. Then we brought in
Weather
Central, right?
Then Weather Central.
Back over to WSI.
Which
right.
It's not Matt and Mai's favorite.
Right. And then back to Barron. But we had some subsequent upgrades during that.
Yeah.
So it's, hardware upgrades, moving boxes out, rewiring
and stuff, trying to do it all. The Saturday mornings became our favorite time to do that, because that's when we had the biggest gap between newscasts and gave us time to recover when things weren't working right.
So, folks, let me give you the dirty secret of John and I. The reason why John and I work together so well is, one, John can make any computer, any piece of hardware, talk to each other, and he could troubleshoot the heck out of it. What John can't do is
draw a picture.
Cannot draw a pretty graphic to save his life.
I cannot draw a picture. No.
I'm the pretty graphics guy. He's the hardware guy. So it's like, Johnny, we need this to be done. Got it. Maddie, I need a pretty picture here. Got it. It has worked so well. We know our limitations.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
That's a Clint Eastwood line. A man's got to know his limitations. All right. So speaking of hardware.
Yep.
So, John, let's just stick to 41 years here. You have seen an incredible change in the technology from how you broadcast weather to how people receive weather to even how you received weather models.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about that. Yeah.
So if we go back 40 years ago, you had what was called actually, we'll go way back. You had what's called a NAFAX machine, which is North American Facsimile. And this thing essentially used a giant roll of wet toilet paper. Think of taking like 10 rolls of toilet paper, but they're all one going this way, and it was wet, little current went through and it burned the maps. You'd be sitting there like, please come out, please come out, please come out. And you essentially got 1.5 models to use. You had that. You had the old-fashioned teletypes. Folks, go watch the movie Airplane when they're in the control tower, and you see the teletypes. That's what we had. That was actually in another room off the studio.
Yep.
And that's where we would get, stuff that would print out constantly coming through. We'd have to run up there, grab it, and rip it. The paper was on big rolls. I should have stolen that machine when we moved here, but the thing weighed a ton and it was filthy. And that's what we did. We had gone from the era of the maps on the wall with the temper paints. You had the little things that you would go through and wash them and do that. So we were on the early edge of computer graphics, but they were, you knew you could make a graphic that was either 8-bit or 16-bit is what you had, which, computer people will tell you that's like really low res.
It's really bad.
And then the other thing was you had to dial stuff up on a modem.
Right. So you like your age, my age remembers that, but there's nobody under 35 that even understands what dial-up modem is.
Yeah.
So ancient, but it was the only way you can get
it was
data.
Only 1,200 baud, folks. Okay, which is like compared to what you get on your cell phone now. That's like, well, I don't want to say a snail, but maybe a turtle.
So unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was when we had the Petersburg tornado. It was dial-up radar for that. And you would dial it up and it would get a scan that comes through and you'd have to wait for it to feed in.
And it would take like 5 to 6 minutes for the full picture to come down.
Yep. You would have to download the satellite photos. So you didn't have like these loops of satellite. You had one picture, still picture to show.
Right. So that was the first real weather computer system you had. Was that the weather spectrum like 1000 or something? It used to
No,
be?
that was Liveline 3.
Liveline, okay.
Liveline 3, which I did have in Cleveland.
Right.
Okay, so I knew how to use it. Then we went to Liveline 5, which when the instructors came in, I had cracked open the boxes and started playing with it. And then
by the way, can we do a timeout for that for people so they understand? Installers came in to install the equipment, and John wanted to know immediately what hardware was in. And so he would literally take the covers off and start looking at it and saying, how do we make this faster? How do we make this better?
Yeah, I had cracked, the boxes were there set up, waiting for them to teach her. I had started making stuff and I'm like, no, don't do it that way. Don't do it that way. That's not the way to do it. So, and then the real fun one after that, from Liveline, we went to our first a series of WSI systems, which was the 9000.
Right. Yeah.
Which was, did you have that in Albany?
We did. Yeah. So when I started, my mentor is like John, retiring this year.
Yep.
And they had Liveline 5 with a live radar.
Yeah.
Chorus maybe was a sweep, but then we had this Weather Spectrum 9000 or whatever the heck it was called.
So the Weather Spectrum 9000 had like 3 boxes to it.
Yeah,
and the third box was the one that got the radar feed.
Yeah,
it got the radar feed, and it ran on OS2, which was an IBM produced software, kind of what it was like IBM's version of Windows.
Mm-hmm.
But more like Windows stole the thoughts from IBM, and it failed. It failed just because IBM's marketing wasn't very good. It was actually at that time probably more stable. Then the real crazy thing was I figured out a way if you do something with the booting of the systems and stuff, to where essentially that became the radar part became essentially a network drive.
Oh God, John.
So. Oh yeah, we had that. We had dial-ups. I mean, I had some friends in the federal government because WSI had produced a regional radar type picture.
Right.
Okay. I guess how long does copyright law run? Probably not a problem. And they were just getting the Dopplers in. Well, the problem was once you got the Doppler radar, you became very tunnel visioned. Just looking straight in at this, and you weren't looking at the big picture. One of the forecasters, and there was one of the best forecasters in the country. we were talking about. They says, God, he says, I'd like to have access to it. I said, well, have you ever seen this software, blah, 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 which was a software WSI had made so people could buy a subscription and dial into their mainframe. But you could also, if you had one of their computers, dial into the computer.
I see.
So we started sharing data back and forth. And they had it set up where every 15 minutes I could hear the modem going off. And it was the Weather Service office dialing in and pulling in our regional radar picture.
That's fantastic.
So
let's okay. So then from there, the computers got better, and
today then all of a sudden then we got, we're supposed to be able to get 3D animations where we could do 3D animations, except they couldn't make it work.
Yeah.
So they got us Silicon Graphics computers, the SGI computers,
which were god awful.
Yeah, but you know what they were used for? The stuff that what they were used for came from was those were the computers used in the original Jurassic Park movie.
Oh,
for the animations.
Yes. Yeah.
So we had that. And we had things so we could produce a 3D animation, which was another one. And like to do a 3D rendering, it's like set it at 6:30, be able to use it at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, it took too long, and it was cumbersome as well. To build. Yeah. Okay, so computers got better for the on-air. We see that now.
Yeah.
But you mentioned there was a major advancement in radar technology. We went from the 57D
from the 57, and then from the 74,
and then to the 88,
and then to the 88, and the numbers, folks. What they refer to is the years that Congress passed the bill to fund them. Okay, the 57s were the original. The 74s were the ones that came out. 74 was over in Volans, Virginia, which is by Brook Neal. That one was actually put in place after the flooding from Hurricane Camille, which devastated Nelson and Amherst counties, caused second highest flood on the James River here. And that was the radar that was in use when the Colonial Heights tornado came out. But the radar operators out there, because they were the radar operators, they weren't the force. It's like there was like this lack of communication going back and forth. So yeah.
So what was it like when you started to see the first images and got to use the Doppler radar, the 88D? I mean, all of a sudden it started to open up the world of technology into seeing into storms.
Yeah, it did do that, but again, it was still slow for us. It's still slow for us here. And the one for us here didn't come until 94.
Okay.
Because Sterling's range, the Tri-Cities tornado was right at the very edge of it, just kind of outside of that. So yeah, we started to see it a little bit more, especially we got a little bit later on in 98 when we had the storm up in Hanover County. And then, of course, when we had the storms up towards Rixieville, which is the only other F4 here in Virginia. So,
and then from that point on, of course, in the past decade, we've transferred over to the dual pole, which is the next innovation of radar.
Yeah, and what dual pole is doing is instead of just being like out in one direction, horizontal, it's also vertical. So you get to see the shapes of the raindrops a little bit better. And we know from essentially the less uniform the shapes are, there's something going on.
Right.
So
and that something going on often leads to talk about possible tornadoes, or in wintertime, it even helps for sleet.
With sleet and stuff. Yeah. The bright banding that you see with sleet that's ongoing there. So that's all, the different advances that have come through. You also have to remember, all right, the little message that goes across the bottom of your screen, just kind of like what's on the bottom right now here when we do it for weather. Those crawl systems weren't here until the mid 1990s.
Yeah.
They just got started going in the early 1990s. So you would have to type them in by hand to put them out. And folks, in my career, I've seen some pretty wild typos in some of those. You can imagine, you miss a letter from certain words and the whole thing changes.
It changes for sure, sure. Okay, so you did mention this a bit. You started off, one of the bigger storms, Camille, the rainfall, that highest flooding on the James River, which of course
second highest. Agnes is the highest,
and those two led to the flood wall, right?
Yeah, along with the Ghost of Juan, the election week flood in 1985.
But you, Petersburg tornado, talk about some of the, Petersburg tornado. I have a list here. Isabel, Ivan tornadoes, January 98th ice storm. Probably so many more that I don't even know. You've seen a whirlwind. 41 years here, you've seen a lot of stuff.
All right. So if we're going to rank them, number one is Isabel.
Okay.
Number one is Isabel.
So I guess I'm going to ask why.
95% of the people here had no lights.
Okay.
For up to 2 weeks in a couple places.
So not destruction, but inconvenience.
Whoa, there was destruction.
Well, for sure, I understand, right? A lot of trees down, right? But in terms of it didn't, right? Okay, yeah,
yeah. And sometimes you have to say, well, what set this event up? You have to go back to 1999. Starting in 1999, we went into basically a 3-year drought. Wells, people by the summer of 2002, shallow wells in Hanover County were running dry. And we were at the Library of Virginia downtown in a meeting. And I literally stood up and asked Mark Warner, I said, when are you going to put a statewide water ban in effect? Had one of our reporters come in and says, my God, you dared to ask that? And, his response was, well, we're going to leave it up to local officials. 6 weeks later, he actually put one out.
Interesting.
And of course, immediately what happened?
It starts to rain.
And rain, and rain, and rain. So you had all these trees that had been stressed for 3 years.
Now are super soaked.
Then you get 5 feet of rain in the next 13 months. And Isabel hits. And what happens with Isabel, the trees have been stressed, the ground has been saturated. Trees weren't snapped off. They were coming up root ball and all.
Yeah.
And they were taking lights out. And when Isabel hit here, Chesterfield County, I think, lost something like 40 police cruisers that got hit by falling trees coming down. They had pulled everybody off the road. And then where Matt lives now is out from where I lived at the time. And couldn't get out the shortest way without paying the tolls. Go out the back of the station here, and then you go up that way. That was completely blocked because the tree's down.
Yeah.
And went around, and the way home, there should have been like 14 traffic lights, and there was one that was working. Wow. Yet where I lived, power was on.
It's all based on where you are near that substation.
Power was on. Well, power was on. Substation, the fact that all the power lines were underground.
Oh, right. Okay, that makes a big difference.
Which is a big thing.
Right, for sure. So, okay, so Isabel is your number one.
Derecho is going to be number two.
Okay, that was
June 29th.
Okay.
June 29th, 2012.
Okay.
That's the one that came roaring down out of the Midwest. Took out power to like 2 million people on the East Coast. It was just such an amazing storm that came through, and that rolled through. Got a guy, I remember, watching storms come through. Guy calls up from Louisa, says, "What's going on in Charlottesville?" I said, "There's some pretty strong sun." He says, "It looks like World War III. There's some pretty strong storms coming through." And I said, yeah. I said, "Let me know what it's like when it gets there." 15 minutes later, he's calling. It is World War III. And those things came rolling through here. May not have toppled trees everywhere, but there were sticks all over the place, power outages. The other thing that happened with that wasn't much of a factor here, but Northern Virginia.
Yes.
All the backup power for the 911 systems failed, which created an issue. So that was just amazing because of the ferocity of that system.
And the fact that it held together from several hundred miles away from the Ohio Valley. I mean, that's, really.
Then I think afterwards you start looking at the ice storm of 1998, which struck December 23rd, 24th. Parts of Williamsburg, basically without electricity until almost New Year's, a real colonial Christmas, folks, down there. And then you come in, you bring in Irene.
Yes.
Name a storm after my mother-in-law, you're in trouble. That one created not to the extent of Isabel, but created a lot of power outages. We had the Super Bowl Sunday ice storm, which took power out at our transmitter during the pregame show. You want to see the phones ring at a television station? Have that happen on Super Bowl Sunday where you're carrying the Super Bowl. we know folks were off the air. So, and now I'm going to give you a little backstory to that. The only reason those of you who had power here, because we had a lot of power outages because of the ice storm, was because the Dominion power truck that came out to check the outage was a blown transformer, had the exact same transformer.
That's incredible.
On their truck.
That's incredible.
Talk about a stroke of luck. Got back on in time for the football game. Not many of you could see it.
Right.
Tennessee Titans stopped on the goal line on the last play of the game when they were trying to tie the game. So
incredible.
And then, you go after that, you start getting into some other storms, the snowstorms, blizzard of 1996. We go into all the storms, 2009, 2010, when we had 3 snowstorms there, including one where it's like, John, don't come into work. It's all changing the rain. We're not going to get any more snow. We won't talk about what happened on the backside of that storm.
So Petersburg tornado, probably one of the biggest tornadoes, right?
It's the first F4
right
here in Virginia.
And then we had the wild February Appomattox tornado.
Evergreen.
And that was also Tappahannock the same day later on, right?
Yeah, well, it was first one was actually the Waverly storm.
Right, early in the day.
And that was the day we were all in the studio and we were watching what was going on. We had just done a cut-in for the severe thunderstorm warning.
Right.
Matt saw rotation. He's pointing and he's trying to tell me to stay on the air when he should just yell, "It looks like it's going tornadic. Stay on the air."
I didn't want to interrupt them, but you're right. I should have.
What you should have done. Then you had the one which was the Appomattox Evergreen.
Yep.
And then we had the storm that went over Chester, went up over Mechanicsville, dropped hail up there, then went up 360 and became 28 mile.
I think it was, yeah.
28 mile EF3 up into Tappahannock, which caused all kinds of chaos
crazy
up there.
Yeah, I mean, and because it hit like dusk night, so which kind of rare for us. I mean, the things that we always seem to say is really good thunderstorms for us are 2 p.m. to like 9 p.m.
Yep. This one was like 7 o'clock.
But it was February, so your sun is already set, you know. And I mean, and we remember that day in February, it was like it's 70 degrees. It's crazy stuff, right?
Yep. Yeah. And that was the thing where by the end of that evening, with being on the air, I'm standing in the key wall, which is the little wall we have behind us. It's green. We have to look at TV sets to see what's. I'm standing in there, and I'd kick my shoes off, and I'm in stocking feet.
It was a long day.
It was a very long day for us.
And then, of course, the tornadoes from Ivan, which was a 50-something
40
across the state.
Across the state.
But,
and the problem is, a lot of times, like when you see coverage out of Oklahoma, here come the tornadoes. They're here, then they come this way, and they all go through. Nah, here, all over the place. So you're looking all over the state.
It was like, what do you cover? You just, you're just out there. Wow. Yeah. So let's talk about what lies ahead for John Bernier.
Trying to stay out of trouble.
Okay.
Hopefully not on the wall of the post office.
So people know you're an avid runner. You run 5Ks, 10Ks. You're running with your daughter and her husband as well.
Yeah, although my daughter hasn't been running very much lately.
Right, yes.
New baby.
Yeah,
so
that's understandable.
Yeah.
But, I mean, so running will continue for you.
That will continue for me, different location. Probably next week we'll be booking a race that starts at Johnny Unitas Stadium. On Towson University. That's the stadium right there that starts there and actually runs through there. Coming up, unfortunately, because of some stuff I have to do, I've got to skip the Park to Park half marathon.
Gotcha.
That's coming up this weekend. Up in Waynesboro, we actually run from Stewart's Draft to Waynesboro, so it's a one-way, just kind of like the Boston Marathon.
Right.
Be doing that. One of the things that we're doing, and one of the reasons why this became the time to retire, is with my daughter's career. She's a doctor, and her husband's career. They are extremely busy, so they're going to need support.
Yes.
So, instead of Doppler duty, it's going to be diaper duty.
So this is not your first grandchild. It's your daughter's first child.
It's my daughter's first child.
This is your third grandchild.
Third grandchild, yeah.
Your son and his wife live abroad and have 2 children.
Right.
But you were mentioning they might be coming back stateside, so you're kind of excited about that.
Yeah, they have a new posting that'll be here in the United States. So we actually will get to see them when they arrive in June. And, you know, the kids have never seen, the grandkids, Gabriel and Mariam, have never seen Charlie.
Right.
Physically. They've seen pictures of him. They've seen video of him. And it's like, here I am, FaceTime. Take a look. There's your cousin right there. Mariam said, don't ask me to change baby's diapers.
And just so everybody says, Mariam is 7? 5. Okay, just one. Yeah. So,
5, but she's going on the same age as Alex,
20,
your daughter.
21, right?
Yeah. So
folks, what you should know about JB is he is a devoted family man. Loves his kids, loves his grandkids, loves to talk about them. There are many times I'll be sitting at home on the couch and 5 o'clock in the evening, John's in the middle of a newscast, and he'll send me a video. Check this out. And there's Mariam riding a horse, or Gabriel, doing a school play in 6 different languages. I mean, it's awesome, and I love everything about it, because really at the end of the day, family is what it's about.
It is. Or Gabriel driving the car. And yes, folks, he has done that overseas.
He will not be able to do that.
It caused a little bit of a problem here. So, but and it's also going to be interesting because Mariam was born overseas. Mariam has never lived in the United States.
Right.
So, and both of those 2 grandchildren are in a school that is under the British school system method of operating, which is a whole lot different in the United States. Yes, those of you seen Harry Potter, they dress like they're at Hogwarts. It's the shirt and the tie and the coat. The other interesting is that the discipline is very strict.
Yeah.
The discipline is very strict in those schools.
Totally different. So, John, as we begin to wrap up here, what is your message to Central Virginia, to the viewers who have watched you for 41 years?
Thank you for, all your support these 41 years. It's been a pleasure here. Remember, I'm retiring. I'm moving on. It's a time to rejoice. It's not a funeral, folks. Okay. It's not a funeral. It's a time to rejoice. Who knows where I may end up. A lot of us, in this business who retire, we end up, popping up on occasions in various places because, number one, you don't get it out of your system. Number 2, it's kind of like they know how to do it. So if we can get them to figure out, the computers we're using and get them, like into our style, they can plug a hole real quickly for us. So, could end up doing a little bit of that, a little bit of dabbling. And of course, I do teach at the college level. So have a couple of contacts up there. I actually have, like 4 universities within 3 miles of me. So one of them that's walking distance, and, may end up doing a little bit up there with that also.
So you kind of have a couple of irons in the fire.
Or at least maybe a couple of things to poke out, see if there's any little hot spots there.
Gotcha. Very good. Well, for me, it has been really a pleasure for 21 years. You've been, I don't want to say a boss, because you never played the boss role. You've been a great colleague, a great friend,
Thank you, sir.
And an excellent mentor.
Thank you, sir.
And I can only hope to fill in your shoes the best possible. So
be your own person.
Well, that's
be your own person.
What I try to do. For
you're
sure.
You're not the replacement. You're the new kid on the block.
New kid on the block, 21 years in. I like that.
Well, let's put it this way. You waited 21 years for the seat. You didn't have to wait 70 plus like King Charles.
The nice thing is I never felt, when I came here, I said to you, I don't want your job.
That's right.
Because I knew where my life was.
Yep.
Baby, I knew that the shift that I had was perfect for family.
Yep.
So what if I didn't sleep? Sleep is for the weak.
You sleep when you're dead.
That's right. Exactly. John, thank you so much. And from all the viewers, I will say thank you. And from everyone here as well.
And you're all welcome.
Very great. That has been, yes, Weather University with Chief Meteorologist John Bernier. You all have a great night.